All right, NBA 2K22 roster analysis. We are breaking down the November 18th update, the second ratings update of the year. We're breaking things down by position. I did all 30 teams, a team breakdown on my previous video. Now we're going to break down all of the positions, give a little more individualized look at everybody. So let's start off with the point guards and quick summary. Red means the player went up in the update. Blue means they went down in the update. White, no change. Yellow means they are injured and yet to have played this year. So we got Steph Curry at a 97, +1, highest rating in the game currently a 97. And he's been great this year. Basically the second best year he's ever had in his career. So no complaints there. The second best point guard in the NBA, that's been a little different. It's definitely been Ja Morant statistically, and he started off at an 86 overall. He's been trickling his way up, was an 89, 90. Very clearly, he's having a better season than the three other players above him, Luca, Harden, and Dame Lillard. Dame Lillard, I believe, started at a 94, and 2K has been very slow to decrease his rating. Career low 49 true shooting on 28 usage. We have 15 games under our belt, folks. This is not 5 games. This is 500 minutes. That is a pretty significant sample. And we see some of the players that Dame is still rated higher than. Guys like Trey Young, who's very clearly an established level all-star player. Ditto for Chris Paul. They've actually dropped Chris Paul's rating this year. He started off the year at a 90. Even players like LaMelo Ball, who was Rookie of the Year and is looking like he's headed towards an all-star berth. Dame's rated higher than all these guys and clearly hasn't deserved it yet. So 2K is not dropping him fast enough. They dropped James Harden, even though he's more or less bounced back from his early season struggles. He wasn't really getting to the line at the start of the year, but you could see this with his free throw rate. It is extremely high, even higher than it was last season, so he's more or less back to normal, but they continue to drop his rating. And when you look at Luca Doncic, he hasn't been held to the same standard as James Harden, because when you look at their stats pretty much across the board, like these guys are pretty much equal. Harden has a 10-point higher true shooting percentage, but also a lower usage rate. But they're great rebounders, great at passing the ball, and they actually do get a fair amount of steals and blocks, but 2K's only dropped Luka Doncic 1 point, even though this has been significantly worse of a season than Luka's previously done. You notice the disparity in their free throw rate. Harden has gone back to normal, but Luka has not. He hasn't been able to figure out the referees as of yet. So, there's just no reason why Luka should be +2 on James Harden at the moment. And let's go down to this mid-tier. I'm okay with all of this. Okay with Malcolm Brogdon going up 2 points to get a little closer to the Murray tier. This is pretty much where he belongs. Mike Conley went up a point. You can see he's having a great year, shooting the ball extremely well. Fred VanVleet goes up. Likewise, a good year. Russell Westbrook, he goes down. One of the worst season he's had since his second year in the league. 50 true shooting on 29 usage. Basically the same thing as Dame, but he's been, I think, fairly penalized, and I think this just shows just how overrated Dame is at the present moment. Appropriately in the same rating field as De'Aaron Fox, who's likewise struggled with his shot, and that's basically what Dame has played like, an 83 rather than a 90. Looking at the rest of the guys, Darius Garland going up, that's pretty good. Puts him in the same tier as these guys. Tyler Hero, I've got him at the point guard because he plays half his minutes there, and he actually started for Kyle Lowry when Lowry missed a game. But he plays both shooting guard and point guard. I personally have him listed as point guard, given the makeup of the team, which I'll get into when I cover the shooting guard position. But his efficiency is kind of tapered off a little bit, but he is still a high usage scorer. And he gets a fair amount of rebounds and assists as well. Not too much on the defensive end, but that's why he's an 83. And this is more or less like your range for like six-man caliber guys, like we see Derrick Rose down here. He's actually been even better than Hero this year, but not quite as many minutes. Playing behind Kemba Walker, who I don't actually see on this list. That's how far down he went. Oh, it's all the way down here. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But Drew Holiday, he struggled, so it makes sense that his rating dropped down to a 47 true shooting in his 9 games. He might be a little slow to come along this season, having had a deep played in the Olympics, a very short off season for him, and then suffered the injury at the start of the year. So he might take a little while to come into form. Spencer Dinwiddie has not. He took a year off, and he's more or less recaptured the form he had previously, prior to the injury. And I like, if anything, he probably should go up a point or so in rating, as I would take him over Westbrook, Fox, and Garland. I think that's pretty reasonable of a take. And trickling down the list, Colt Anthony has been great for the Orlando Magic, arguably their best or second best player. His rating went up when you compare him against some of the guys that have a higher rating. He's basically been the Fred VanVleet of the Orlando Magic. He probably should be in this 83 tier. 82 is fine as long as he keeps proving himself. He'll eventually hit the 83. Kyle Lowry struggled a little bit with his shot in the early going, but still a stout defender, great passer, solid rebounder, although these are lower rebounds numbers than he usually puts forth, which may have been part of his rating decrease. We got a bunch of guys at 80 rating here, the best of whom have been Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brunson unequivocally. Maxey has been starting for Ben Simmons. He's not much of a passer, but he is a very good scorer. We see with the 61 true shooting on 20 usage. And that's more or less the book on Jalen Brunson too, although he is a bit better of a playmaker. Brunson probably should be, both these guys probably should be in like the 81, 82 range. Brunson more or less in the same range as like a Derrick Rose, as like a 6-man caliber guard. And he got an opportunity to step up with a couple injuries earlier in the year for the Dallas Mavericks. Rubio's likewise been great, kind of in the same vein. Solid backup, should be a starter somewhere in the NBA. Schroeder's been solid for the Celtics, basically been the Kemba Walker, or what they got out of Kemba Walker last year, they're getting out of Schroeder right now, and at a fraction of the cost. So he's been solid. Graham, the Pelican season's kind of fallen apart. Like, it's fine that he's an 80. This is kind of like his ceiling, I think, or his floor. I don't know. Don't have a ton of strong opinions on him. Kemba Walker, he started the season really hot, but the Knicks season is kind of falling apart a little bit. The starting unit isn't really meshing. This is the lowest assist rate he's had of his career because the Knicks use Julius Randle essentially as like a point forward and use the guards as like spot-up shooters. So Kemba Walker's kind of like a glorified Derek Fisher at the present moment, not really dominating the ball like he used to. He kind of struggles to get to the rim, very reliant on his jump shot now, which struggling to get to the rim is also going to put a damper on his assist rate as well. So it does make sense for him to drop. D'Angelo Russell doesn't resemble the all-star player that he was a couple of years back, so also likewise makes sense to drop him. Alex Caruso, he's actually starting at power forward right now for the Chicago Bulls, so I might end up switching his position to that. But he starts at the 4 and then backs up Lonzo Ball. So you can see he's actually like the best steal rate in the NBA. Great defensive player, and okay distributing the ball. And offensively, he's not going to give you much beyond like the occasional 3-point shot or whatever. You can see he's got a low usage rate at 13, but overall very solid player. One of the best was one of the best backup point guards in the league. Now he's technically starting but not at point guard. Josh Giddey's been solid for OKC. He can't score the ball at all, but he's a phenomenal rebounder and a pretty good passer. So the hope, and it's solid, putting up defensive stats as well. So the hope is his shooting will eventually come around, but otherwise he's like kind of the next Sean Livingston, I would say. Simons has been solid off the bench. Eric Bledsoe, his rating went up because he started the season absolutely dreadfully, but he kind of came around in this rating cycle. Still not really much of a scorer at present. Not really getting to the rim like he used to. And his jump shot's just been completely broken this year, but he is a solid defensive player, and his shooting numbers can't get much worse than what they're already at, so I expect that he'll probably go back towards like 79, 80 by the end of the year. Paddy Mills, I don't know why they dropped his rating. He's like mostly relied on as a scorer, and he shoots the ball efficiently. He isn't much of a playmaker, though. He's really an undersized two-guard. He's actually starting at the two-guard right now with Joe Harris injured for the Nets. McConnell started slow, bounced back, so his rating's fine. Mitchell hasn't really been able to score efficiently, but he is a great defensive player, not too much offensively, so I wouldn't necessarily mind his rating dropping down to like 76, 75. Shake Milton's always been great. Just like a jack of all trades. Solid offensive player for the 76ers, and able to stem the bleeding from Ben Simmons not really being there. Marcus Smart has been awful offensively. He's actually been playing a lot more too with Jaylen Brown sidelined, so I might be changing his position in a future installment. Tyus Jones has been great. He couldn't really shoot threes prior to this season, so this 63 true shooting is a reflection of him finally developing a three-point shot. But not a great finisher, doesn't get to the line at all, but a very good passer, never turns it over either. So, and then we get down to the list. These guys are kind of like clinging to their various rotations. Cameron Payne hasn't been the same what he did last year. Delon Wright and Lou Williams are kind of stuck in a timeshare at the moment. Kevin Porter Jr. has been awful for the Rockets as the starting point guard. Malik Monk hasn't been able to get much traction with the Lakers. Howell Nato has been solid as the Wizards' backup point guard. Not too much to write home about. Trey Burke, you might be able to start making a case for his rating to go up. He's only played 45 minutes at present, though, but certainly if he put together, if he had another 100 minutes at these levels, I would recommend bumping him up to like a 76, 77 or something. The rest of these guys, let's bold him. Delano Benton was the big mover in this roster update. He moved up 5 points in rating, and he's clearly deserved it. He's been the backup point guard for the Raptors this year. 58 true shooting. He's not much of a three-point shooter, but he is a great finisher. He's a big point guard, so you can see that with his free throw rate. He does draw a lot of contact, great rebounder, and his playmaking is the one area where he needs work. He's kind of like a shooting guard slasher, like in the think like DeAndre Bembry. He's basically filling the role that Bembry filled for the Raptors last season. Campazzo and Rondo have really struggled with their shooting. Campazzo's assist rate is kind of depressed by playing with Joker, but he is a much better passer than this assist rate would indicate. Elfrid Payton, kind of the same story as Trey Burke. He's he's solid. He's better than your average third string, certainly, as he was a starter in the NBA last season. Very good rebounder, very good passer, good defender. Just can't shoot to save his life. Ish Smith had a good season for the Wizards last season. Is kind of struggling to fit in Charlotte behind LaMelo Ball. Never been a great shooter, but he's usually better than this. Anybody who's shooting like under 40 true shooting is like, that's sub NBA caliber, so it's just like indicative of how much they are struggling. And Gary Payton II, very clearly with 196 minutes and a 22.8 PER, 74 true shooting, getting to the line, fantastic rebounder. I take back whatever I said about Alex Caruso. He's been like Alex Caruso on steroids. This is a very obvious player to increase in rating, and had an appropriate level of sample in order to do that. The fact that 2K did not update his rating, given that they updated everybody else on the Golden State Warriors, was, in short, absolutely disgraceful, and they need to do a better job. And that pretty much rounds out the rest of the point guards. So yeah, let's head over to the shooting guards. We can see the top players that I have at the 2. 2K might have their positions swapped. I haven't really checked, but I've got Kawhi at the 2 this year because Paul George has been at the 3, and I figured that once Kawhi returns from injury, if he does, it would come at the expense of Reggie Jackson, who's the starting 2 guard on this team. Or if anything, they would move Reggie Jackson to the 1, and then start Eric Bledsoe. But the point is, we'd be changing the position of Jackson, or Kawhi would just be entering the lineup as a 2, and like him and Paul George are pretty indistinguishable in terms of what position they play. And Kyrie, Harden's been the point guard on the team since he joined the Nets, and if he rejoined the starting lineup at any point, it would come at the expense of Joe Harris. And if Kyrie ends up getting traded because he's not able to suit up for the Nets or whatever, then we would change his position, most likely back to point guard, depending on who picks him up. But for the moment, I got these 2 guys at the 2. So Devin Booker, Mitchell, Bradley Beal, these are the 3 highest rated shooting guards. And Donovan Mitchell has clearly been better than either Booker or Beal. His rating went up, but it should go up even further. Like, he was underrated, being lower than those guys to begin with, and now he should just be completely above them. Fantastic steal rate. Everything else is, he's the most efficient scorer of the group. Got the highest usage rate as well. So that's pretty much that. Bradley Beal, the Wizards have been doing well, but hasn't been because of Beal. It's been because of his teammates, and it's kind of similar in the vein of like Dame Lillard. He's been struggling with his shot, and definitely should have his rating dropped. 2K has not taken that step as of yet, but clearly when you go down the list, hasn't even been like a top 3 shooting guard in the league. I want to say, is he even top 3 in the East? We got Levine, Jaylen Brown, and I guess he's number 3 in the East behind those 2 guys. Jaylen Brown, he was sidelined for this rating cycle, so his rating didn't really get a chance to go up, but he's been great. And Zach LaVine's basically the same story. These guys have 60 true shooting, clearly much better at scoring than the 3 guys above them, but they are significantly worse at playmaking than those 3 up top, but all the same. I wouldn't say Zach LaVine's like a bad playmaker or anything, but there are a lot of he plays on the same team as DeRozan, Nick Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, etc. So they have a very balanced attack in Chicago, which kind of depresses everybody's assist rate. But it is definitely a weakness for Jaylen Brown. His career high is like 16%, and it's gone down even though they moved off of Kemba Walker with the Celtics. I've got Shea at the 2 guard because I have Josh Giddey at the 1. I think 2K has that reversed, but he's got a lower assist rate than Josh Giddey, so I kind of figured that was appropriate. But he's been solid. The Thunder have been winning games. No problems with his rating. CJ McCollum, he should have been higher rated than this prior, but he started the season really hot, then struggled a little bit with the shot this cycle. So that's why he dropped down, and I'm okay with him being an 85 if in this tier with Shea. Clearly, Tyrese Halliburton, though, for there to be a 4-point gap between, or a 4 to 5 point gap between the next best 2 guards, there's clearly something wrong with that, as Halliburton's basically been on par with these guys. Trent has been really good. He doesn't create for others very well, but he is a very great defender and a great spot shooter as well. Will Barton's been consistently the second best player for the Denver Nuggets, scoring the ball and distributing at a high rate. And at the very, very, very clearly, he went down in rating. I don't think that's correct. I think he went up. So I'm going to change that. Let me just actually hop back in, search for him to make sure. Yeah, all right. So that was just a typo on my behalf. So yeah, he went up in rating. And let's bold Gary Trent also there for visual purposes. Connie Cunningham, he really struggled in the first 3 games of the season. Since then, he's been a lot better. So I expect that the more games he gets under his belt, the better his stats will look. But certainly, with 9 games, 274 minutes under his belt. 2K could have dropped his 80 rating to like 78 or something. You know, like for his efficiencies, he's clearly much worse than every player that we've covered so far. I don't think he should be on par with some quality starters. These guys are like top 5 shooting guards in the conference, and Cunningham has yet to really show that. Seth Curry's been great, kind of exemplifying just how mediocre Cunningham has been. Curry's having a career year, 65 true shooting. Jalen Green has not dropped in rating, even though same conversation as with Cunningham, like 483 minutes in 15 games. This is a significant sample. This is like 1/8 of the season. He's been absolutely awful, and they haven't dropped his rating. And they have dropped other rookie ratings. I'm trying to remember who. It's a different position, but basically, Green has who? What was the fucking draft class? Hold on. Let's hop into Basketball Reference. As I figured this out. There we go. Draft. Who would they drop in rating? They dropped Jalen Suggs, who we'll get to in a little bit. They dropped his rating 3 points, and he's basically been as bad as Green. So 2K very clearly showing some favoritism to Jalen Green, and he's also statistically been as bad as Kevin Porter Jr. And we saw Kevin Porter Jr. got dropped 2 or 3 points. So 2K needs to show some fairness to the some of the top-rated rookies. Rozier struggled with his shot, so he drops in rating. Pat Beverly has, on the other hand, not. His assist rate is the highest it's been in years. I think this is a career high assist rate, even though he's been like starting at the 2 next to D'Angelo Russell. The Clippers more or less used him as like a Derek Fisher type, spot-up shooter only. But clearly he feels a little invigorated by the offensive responsibility that he has not really received in the last 5 years or so. And obviously still a solid defensive player and rebounder. Colin Sexton, he is unfortunately out for the year, so he's going to hang out at a 79 overall rating for the duration of this season, but he really struggled with his shot, wasn't really much of a playmaker either. 79 may have even been, a little high given what he had already done in his 300 minutes this season, but had he continued at this rate, certainly I think it would have gone down a little further. Until then, we're going to have to wait basically a year for his rating to get any changes. DiVincenzo's yet to suit up. Ditto for Oladipo. Klay Thompson will be back in a month. Down the rest of the list to like the lower end, starting shooting guards. You see Tim Hardaway Jr. struggled a little bit with his shot. Chris Duarte started off the year hot, but has kind of cooled off a little bit as not necessarily in terms of his shooting, but like his usage rate as they've gotten back guys like LeVert, Brogdon, etc. from injury. They haven't had to rely on him as much offensively, and it's not like he's blowing the wheels off anybody with his three-point shooting at present, but they kind of overshot him to begin with by bumping him from a 73 to a 79. I would have put him at like a 77, so they brought him down to a 78, and he'll probably continue trending down. Still a solid player, good rookie, but it is worth noting that he is having a better season considerably than Jalen Green, and they dropped Duarte down. But Grayson Allen, he has been great, having a career season, shooting the ball really well from 3. Probably is going to start over DiVincenzo once DiVincenzo's back from injury. So I anticipate that his rating will continue to climb and should be higher than DiVincenzo in like a month. Jordan Poole's been a little erratic with his shot, but solid overall. I don't have a problem with his rating going up, even though his stats kind of reflect that he'd been struggling, because he was a 76 before, which I thought was just way too low. Once we get down to like the 76s, we'll see how much they've been. Some of those guys have been struggling. Fournier's been struggling, so it makes sense for his rating to drop. Oubre had like a crazy 13 of 17 game, like 30-something points. And that's, aside from that, he was kind of mediocre over the last 2 weeks, but that was good enough to boost his rating. Eric Gordon drops in rating, and he's been unequivocally better than Jalen Green. 62 true shooting versus 48, and basically everything else the same across the board. Lower usage rate, of course, but I think if Eric Gordon was asked to take on a higher offensive role, he wouldn't necessarily have an issue with that. Yeah, I'm not going to beat the Jalen Green horse into the ground too much more as we scroll down the list a little bit. Dillon Brooks, he came back from injury, and he's been really good through 4 games so far, so I would anticipate his rating going back up. Emmanuel quickly, his rate, he struggled to start the year, but he came on a little bit, averaging like 12 points over this rating cycle, so he goes back up. Kobe White, he returned from injury, obviously only 2 games. I anticipate his rating would drop because he doesn't have the same role that he did last year when he was a starter. Reggie Jackson, he is sort of in the same boat as like Eric Bledsoe. He struggled a little bit with his shot in the early part of the year, and he's on the comeback trail. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they dropped his rating because, similar to Chris Duarte, he was underrated, but they overshot him way too much. He's not really an efficient scorer at all. Isn't really a great playmaker either. So I think a 77 is appropriate for him. Definitely not the 79 that they gave him. Derek White, kind of in the same boat as Alexander Walker. He hasn't looked the same since returning from injury last year. And yeah, his efficiency is not where it needs to be. Might eventually, I personally would start like Devin Vassell or Lonnie Walker over Derek White and just use him as the backup point guard for Murray, because he is more or less the backup point guard. That's why he's got a higher assist rate than your average 2 guard. He still is a solid defender though with the steal rate and block rate. But Bogdanovich drops. He's been struggling to start the season. Terrence Ross has been struggling, but no change for him. That's fine, I guess. You can see he is definitely worse than the other 77s, though, except for Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley has been awful with a 44 true shooting. Was starting last season. That is not the case this season. Clearly, he could go down a little bit in rating, as we see Luke Kennard, DeAnthony Melton, Damian Lee. These guys are all wildly overplaying Malik Beasley. Melton struggled a little bit with his shot and then lost his starting job to Dillon Brooks, so he hits the bench. Still a pretty solid defensive player. I don't know if 2K recognizes that, but we see with the 50 true shooting, certainly not that great. Damian Lee with the 58 true shooting. He's been at this level for like a number of years. He's gotten big minutes since Klay Thompson's been out. We'll see if he holds on to that once Thompson is back in about a month. Thibel's been solid, but he basically missed the cycle with COVID. I got Goran Dragic here. He hasn't really played since the 5th game of the year. I think he started 1 game for Fred VanVleet, sat out 1 game. But otherwise, he's just waiting for a buyout or a trade. Duncan Robinson, he went down in rating, and we'll cover some other players who went down in this tier. Like, this is like acceptable, like, I guess. He's really struggled offensively. His true shooting last year was somewhere in the 60s. One of the best 3-point shooters that we had seen in quite a while. And this is completely out of nowhere after him getting like a massive contract in free agency from the Heat. So we'll see. As mentioned before, Jalen Green has not gone down in rating, but Jalen Suggs has. To Suggs' credit or discredit, he has been even worse than Jalen Green, but it's still silly for there to be a 4-point difference in those guys' rating. Kevin Huerter dropped in rating, which I don't really understand because he's actually been really good since DeAndre Hunter got hurt. He had like a couple 30-point games, etc. So his ratings should be going up at the very least. It certainly doesn't make sense for him to be lower than Duncan Robinson. Just looking at the stats. Same story with like Josh Richardson. He's not what he like. I don't think anybody's like really confusing Josh Richardson with like a starting caliber 2 guard, but certainly he's a lot better at a 74 than some of the other options that we've come across already, both offensively and defensively. Bones Highland has been basically the sixth man on the Nuggets. He's one of the few guys who's been putting the ball in the basket, basically earning more minutes than Facundo Campazzo for the Denver Nuggets, and he basically stole Austin Rivers' job. We see Austin Rivers down here at a 73, has been absolutely awful with a 2.2 PER, 35 true shooting. So certainly, maybe there should be like more than 1 point separating those two guys. I don't know, but clearly, and again, hey, if we want to compare this to Jalen Green or Connie Cunningham, those guys should not have a 5 to 6 point boost on or advantage over Highland in the early going. Aside from that, Garrett Temple, the 3-and-D players for shooting guards are all like really low rated. They need to fix their formula. Basically, everybody who's a shooting guard should have a rating like 2 points higher, in my opinion. And Frank Ntilikina has been solid. He's been playing the 2 guard this year. Was kind of doomed as a point guard prospect with the Knicks over the last 4 years. But he's not really a good distributor or like a good driver or anything, but he is a pretty good 3-point shooter and defender. So it makes sense that he would have success playing the 2. And we see he's been a lot better than a lot of the other options that we've come across. So he should continue to go up. Forbes has struggled with his shot. Terrence Davis has really struggled. Egad. Looks like he fell out of the rotation with only 10 games played. And the rest of these guys have all struggled with their shot. Anybody who got neglected down here? Austin Reeves, 213 minutes with a 70 overall rating. That probably could trickle up, but he didn't play at all in the cycle due to injury. All right, let's move on to the small forwards. We're paced by Jimmy Butler, very clearly the best small forward in the NBA right now. I, of course, have Kevin Durant at the 4. Butler's having a career season, 63 true shooting. Despite the free throw rule change, he has not stopped getting to the line. The contact he creates is pretty legit, no bullshit there. A fantastic defensive player, and even though the Heat added Kyle Lowry as the primary playmaker for the team, he still does a fair amount of shot creation himself. So, 94 for Jimmy Butler, and could even trickle past that to like a 95, if anything. These are MVP caliber numbers, and while I wouldn't necessarily put him on the same tier as like a Curry, Giannis, or Joker, he's looking like he's probably a top 5 player in the NBA this year, top 5 to 10. DeMar DeRozan, he is basically right behind him. Not quite career year, but like this is the second season he's ever had at this level, and the first in quite a while. Great playmaker. He's still getting to the line at a high rate, and his 3-point shooting has been better than it's previously been. So that was his one weakness, and now he's rectifying that. But somehow, rates lower than an 89, rates lower than a 90, despite his statistical production. And if we go through comparing that 24.4 PER to some of the other guys we've seen, he would be the top-rated shooting guard. All these guys are at 89. He's clearly much better than like Bradley Beal, and has basically been better than guys like Luca and Harden as well. So, and also without even leaving the position, we look at Jason Tatum at 88. That's just fucking disgusting. 2K should be embarrassed. This is similar to like Dame Lillard's rating not dropping fast enough. They are giving him just way too much credit for awful shooting. 50 true shooting on 32 usage. His assist rate is down, even though he's had more playmaking responsibility. To his credit, his rebound rate is a career high at present, and looks like his defensive stats are there as well, but not really getting to the line as much as he used to. That's a common trend for players this year. And it's not so much his 3-point shooting, even though he is shooting a career low from 3. It's actually his rim finishing. He hasn't His finishing has completely fallen off. He's like 10% worse than last season. So that's been part of Tatum's struggles. And Paul George to also drop in rating, it's just like 2K doesn't understand what they're doing, period. As we see at an 89, same conversation as DeRozan. He's better than a lot of the other guys in the 89 tier, and there was no reason for him to drop in rating. Yes, he shot the ball worse in this cycle. He shot like 39% from the field over the last 2 weeks, but that just exemplifies how underrated he was prior to that. He should have been, instead of dropping him from a 90 to an 89, this should have been a drop from like a 93 to a 92 or something like that. So clearly 2K needs to boost the ratings of these two guys and get Tatum down a little lower. Chris Middleton only played 1 game in this cycle. He struggled a little bit, and they previously dropped his rating. But yeah, even he's been better than Tatum so far. Jeez. Anthony Edwards, I moved to the 3 as they moved Pat Beverly into the starting lineup. So Edwards started at the 3 last year. He is a solid rebounder for a shooting guard, so that's totally fine. But actually, his rating is not the worst. It's kind of, you know what makes it bad is basically all of the small forwards are 2 points higher than all of the shooting guards. So for Edwards at an 84 with this production, we took a look at the shooting guards. We find the guys with the 15.6s. We got Seth Curry at a 79, Gary Trent at an 80, Halliburton at an 81. So it's not necessarily that I have a problem with Edwards' rating in particular. It's more that the shooting guard formula is just trash, and all the small forwards are just going to rate higher than the 2 guards as a result of that. Ingram's really been struggling. Not really looking like an all-star caliber player. He put up numbers the year before Zion was on the team, or the year that Zion was hurt. And he hasn't been able to replicate that success again, so I'm okay with his rating. Previously, I would have considered him underrated. Ingram was definitely underrated last season, but based on this, I'm fine with him at an 84. Anunoby's probably should be rated higher than Ingram, if anything, because offensively, it looks like he's the same, but he is a significantly better defensive player. But RJ Barrett, his rating is disgraceful. At an 83, they dropped him 1 point, and we can see with a 10.9 PER, 50 true shooting, doesn't create for others. Like, okay, he's a rebounder, sure, not really racking up defensive stats either, not getting steals at all. This is awful. He's very clearly like worse than pretty much every other player that's an 80 overall among the small forwards, and he's an 83. They've got him as a top 10 small forward in the NBA. Come on, this is a joke. Michael Bridges, clearly much better player than RJ Barrett. Oh my God. But they haven't boosted his rating, even though the Phoenix Suns went 8-0 in this update, or in the last 2 weeks. And they didn't boost anybody's rating on the team, aside from like Frank fucking Kaminsky. Norm Powell, he goes up. He's been great. And again, likewise, if we compare his production to RJ Barrett, this is pathetic. Caris LeVert has struggled with his shot a little bit. Same conversation as like Jason Tatum, with a very low shooting on high usage. But otherwise, he's been solid across the board, and he's still working his way into shape after returning from injury. But I'm okay with him hanging out at an 82 in this update. If he continues to struggle with his shot, he's going to have to go down, because we look at some of the guys like Gordon Hayward dropped in rating, and he hasn't been struggling with his shot. Andrew Wiggins has clearly been much better than LeVert so far. Sadiq Bey, he's been struggling with his shot, but they didn't drop him. Bogdanovic has been solid. Healed solid with his shooting. Michael Porter, he might miss the year with his back problem. He might have to have back surgery. So his rating dropped because he had been struggling through that. This might be where he ends the season at. We'll see. Doesn't seem like he has any timetable to return. Pat Connaughton having a career season as the sixth man for the Bucks, 62 true shooting. So he got a +3, I believe. This might be a typo at 78. Hold on. Connaughton, 78. Yeah, it's a typo. Oopsie. Sorry about that, guys. And this just shows how good my memory is. All right, so sort range by overall and then by minutes played. Alrighty. Let's trickle back up. Lu Dort, I got him at the small forward, as I've got Giddey at the 1, Shea at the 2 on this team. He averaged 22 points over the last 2 weeks, and 2K didn't change his rating, which is fucking ridiculous. Like, let's look at Lu Dort's shooting line, or stats overall, against RJ Barrett, who was absolutely awful, shot like 30% from the field, and over the last 2 weeks, and had his rating go down 1 point. Like, this is pathetic. This disparity between those two guys. Let's see. Lauri Markkanen didn't play because of his injury this cycle. Taylor Horton Tucker, he went up 2 points, and he's been great. Very clearly, filling in for the shoes of LeBron, he was starting for, and only played the 3 games. If he continues playing at this level, I could definitely recommend him going above an 80 overall. I would expect his production to kind of settle in around like the 16 to 18 PER range. So probably an 80 overall rated player. Probably in the same range like Saddiq Bey and Andrew Wiggins, I think. But we'll see. Franz Wagner, he was very underrated prior to this, and he kind of still is. He's been playing really well for the Orlando Magic. And again, if we go back to Jalen Green and Connie Cunningham, like, not even close. Not even close. The rest of these guys are all kind of like placeholder starters on their respective teams. You can see the guys that have been shooting well went up, and the guys that have been shooting not so well, they went down. Hunter's going to miss the next 2 months with injury, so that should lead to a little more opportunity for Kevin Huerter and Cam Reddish. Reddish dropped because his production kind of bottomed out after his hot first 2 weeks. There's basically no reason why Alec Burks should have a lower, be rated 6 points lower than RJ Barrett, as we see him over here, the 14.9 PER, 55 true shooting, solid defense, solid playmaking and rebounding. Where is Barrett? All the way up here. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Svi Mikhailiuk, he's been solid. 62 true shooting, having his best year probably. Danny Green, 65 true shooting, so he goes up. Jetty Osman, 63 true shooting, he goes up. Bembry, same story. Basically, anybody that's shooting well is going to go up. They don't look at really much else besides three-point shot for a lot of these guys. That's one of the main ratings that 2K will be updating every single week. We see Joe Harris. He goes down to a 75. Even though him and Bruce Brown dropping in rating is just kind of ridiculous, I think. For them to both be rated lower than DeAndre Bembry just shows like how little 2K understands what the fuck they're doing. Also, I guess Joe Harris should be a shooting guard instead of a small forward. Whoopsie daisy. As that's where he starts. Bruce Brown starts at the 3, and Bembry has been bracking up Bruce Brown. So yeah, that's why I didn't get to talk about that disparity. What's his minutes played? So I have to do this resort. 423. Okay. Right here. Right under Duncan Robinson, and we see right here, like for Joe Harris to drop in rating, 62 true shooting versus Duncan Robinson's 51 true shooting. Like, Come on, guys. And for them to both be in the same, like, these three guys just being on the same field as, like, Jalen Suggs, I don't know. Like, 1 point better than James Bouknight, who doesn't play at all. And, so, like, these guys are starters, essentially, and they're rated 1 point better than some third strings. It's pretty suspect. But getting back to the small forwards, Jaden McDaniels has really struggled with his shot, so he drops. Iguodala's been solid for Golden State. He was a 73 prior to this, which was like absurd, but he goes up. He's basically a better version of whatever the Knicks get out of R.J. Barrett. Iguodala's better than that. He's only got a 9 usage rate, but I wish that R.J. Barrett had a 9 usage rate. He is one of the more overrated prospects to come into the league in some time, I think. Other than that, Dozier goes up, even though his production didn't really indicate that it would. He's a great defensive player, been the sixth man on the Nuggets this season, next to like Bones Highland or whatever, and he's been playing a pretty big role off the bench for them for a number of years, so this was overdue. Everybody else clearly just like struggling with their shot. Kent Bazemore, Justin Holiday dropping. These guys play like 24 minutes a game for their respective teams, but sure, drop them in rating so they're lower than some other guys who barely even play. More guys who struggled with their shot. And Wayne Selden, you see here he went up 2 points in rating, even though he did not play at all. And the reason behind that is because his position changed from shooting guard to small forward. That is the only thing that changed. So very clearly, if Wayne Selden is going up 2 points in rating just from changing his position, it means that your formula is fucked up, and you need to invest some time and resources into fixing that, because it just throws your entire league out of whack. Let's go to the power forwards. All right, so as mentioned previously, Kevin Durant, I got at the 4. Great rebounder, great. This is his highest assist rate of his career. That actually means more to me than like he's always been a great shooter. Mark of the beast is his shooting percentage at the moment, and still getting to the line at a high rate. Defensive stats haven't really been there. That's a little bit of a concern, as these were really good when he was with Golden State pre-Achilles tear. And the Nets are not exactly a loaded defensive team, so they do need a little bit out of KD in order to keep teams honest. But offensively, maybe has never been a better player in the world. Offensively, I would take Kevin Durant over Michael Jordan any day of the week for reasons that are should be obvious, but maybe are not to the average person. But that's not what this video is about. I just want to say controversial things so that you guys will talk to me in the comments. Giannis, likewise, having a great year, MVP caliber, as per usual. Highest assist rate, I believe, of his career, as Drew Holiday missed a little bit of time. Highest block rate of his career, as he plays a lot of center this year with Brook Lopez hurt. And I thought it was a little curious that his rating didn't go up, because he's basically in the same tier as like guys like Curry, Durant, etc. LeBron's rating did not drop, and this is he did not play at all in the cycle, so you can make the argument that he wasn't supposed to drop this week, but these are the worst this is the worst 6-game stretch that LeBron's had in like 18 years. Like, he hasn't been this bad over 6 games, and I say bad loosely. Like, these 6 games, like, most players would be happy about, but for LeBron James, who's been an MVP caliber guy for the last decade and a half, these are subpar. But 2K didn't touch his rating at all. He's not getting to the line as much as he used to, and yes, he's older. This is not just like a sample thing. He's older, and he's playing through injury, so he's naturally going to be less aggressive offensively. And that means that's one area where we can clearly decrease his rating. Anthony Davis. Ooh, all right, hold on. Doesn't make sense for me to have both of them at the 5, at the 4. Kind of threw this together a little haphazardly. or there's a lot of prep work that goes into this. Occasionally, something slips through the cracks like that. All right, so Zion's yet to play this year. Who knows when he ever will. Harris was solid, didn't play. Only played like 2 games this cycle due to health and safety protocols, etc. Sabonis goes down in rating, which was kind of like suspect for me because Julius Randle went down, and very clearly Randle deserved it, but Sabonis with his 63 true shooting, still solid passer, good rebounder. I'm not really buying that. If you were going to drop Sabonis, then you need to drop Randle even further than what you did. John Collins clearly outplaying Randle at present with a 64 true shooting. Only a 20 usage. That's partially because Trae Young has been ball hogging it a lot of late. Trae in particular, let's head back over to the point guards to explain that. His usage rate, when he's playing hero ball, and that was okay when he was getting to the free throw line at a historic rate, but he is not. And like that's been part of Atlanta's struggles is he's not as adept offensively. Not because his like shooting has been worse or anything, but the 3 extra free throw attempts that he was generating per game that goes a long way in terms of the team's offensive efficiency and whatnot. So I think that they should be giving it to Collins a lot more than they presently are, and certainly his production seems to warrant that. Miles Bridges and Harrison Barnes, these have been the early favorites for most improved player. They kind of tapered off a little bit in terms of their efficiency. Bridges more so than Barnes. But we'll see if they're able to hang 10 throughout the year. We're only 1 month in. Evan Mobley is probably the early Rookie of the Year favorite, but he's going to miss the next 2 to 4 weeks with an injury. So he went up. He started hitting threes in this rating cycle, which is scary, as he was not doing that over the first 2 weeks. Wendell Carter Jr., he's been shooting threes a lot more this year, so the production that he has right now is probably what you could expect from Evan Mobley, but you could see, even taking that into account, he's a much better rebounder than Evan Mobley. That is one of Mobley's weaknesses. But also not a great shot blocker. And Mobley's playing the 4 right now. Carter Jr.'s really a 5. Like he's a little stretched as a 4, but maybe he stays there long term, even once Jonathan Isaac comes back. We'll see. Porzingis has been great since coming back from injury, looking like the unicorn. Hasn't been this good in a little while. And again, his shooting percentage is held down a little bit by his first couple games of the year. But again, if we want to look at Porzingis' production versus Barnes, Bridges, I won't say John Collins, because John Collins should be a little higher than this, but Sabonis and Randle are both 86s, and they have not really been at the same level as KP. Scottie Barnes, he actually looks like the Rookie of the Year favorite at present because of Mobley's injury. He did not lose his starting job once Pascal Siakam came back. Siakam now starting at the 5, so Barnes has a clear path, and with Mobley out for the next 2 to 4 weeks, he's going to be able to get some traction moving forward. No rating change necessary for him, though. He's kind of leveled off. This is what we can expect from him moving forward. Christian Wood, he's really struggled with his shot. Still clearly the best player on the Rockets, though that isn't necessarily saying much, but I'm okay with him being in this range with like Jeremy Grant. If you're going to have Kyle Kuzma, Melo, Keldon Johnson, those guys in 80s, I'm okay with Wood being an 82. But certainly, if we're going to have Wood in an 82, we can't have Porzingis in an 83, and we can't have John Collins in an 84. So very clearly some separation needed for those guys. Al Horford's been great this year. The best block rate of his career. Great rebounding numbers also for him. So he started the year, I believe, at like a 79. And like he should be trickling up a little faster than what he's currently, his current trajectory. Basically on par with like Wendell Carter Jr. is what like the level of player I would consider him at. Melo, a lot's been made of his scoring, but like defensively, he's been awful, and this doesn't really show something that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. But like he gets targeted defensively on every single possession. Also, his rebound rate is very low for a power forward. This is really more of like a small forwards rebound rate, or even there are point guards that rebound better than this. This is like Kyle Lowry's current rebound production in like a down year. You would hope that Melo would be getting rebounds more along the lines of like Kyle Kuzma, who's kind of struggled a little bit with his shot, but he still continues to rebound the ball at a career high rate. And Draymond Green is going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. And it's very shocking to me that his rating did not go up in this update. They updated like 9 Golden State Warriors players, and Green wasn't one of them, even though he's having by far his best season in years. He hasn't been this good since like 2016 when they won their first title or second title. I think that was their second title. And yeah, going down the list, Jaren Jackson Jr. drops because he's been struggling with a little bit with his shot. Not his three-point shot per se, but like his post game really hasn't been there. He's not really getting to the line much either. Actually, on that note, the fact that Draymond Green getting to the line this much, yeah, like he's super underrated right now. Yeah, just imagine if he's offensively like on par with like Christian Wood and Jeremy Grant, but significantly better of a defensive player than Christian Wood. Like, yeah, I think Green should very clearly be in like the 83 tier, on par with like Scottie Barnes at the very least. Going down the list, Hart goes up. Great rebounder. He's the best assist rate of his career. He's been playing a lot with Zion Williamson out. Otto Porter resurrected his career with Golden State, coming off the bench for them. 60 true shooting, solid defensive numbers, great rebound numbers. Playing the 4 more than the 3 for the first time in his career. Kind of in the same vein as like a Miles Bridges and a Harrison Barnes. Anderson started the year slow. It looks like he bounced back a little bit. Marvin Bagley has been out of the rotation, but they did not drop his rating at all. Obi Toppin has been very good for the Knicks off the bench, but they did not bother to boost his rating at all. Rudy Gaye was really good in the one game he played right before the update. So we'll keep an eye on him. Thaddeus Young, he started off the year like out of the rotation, but he's really come on and basically on par with the year that he had with the Chicago Bulls last season. Great finisher, continues to pass the ball at a really high level, proving that last season wasn't a fluke. Solid rebound numbers, great defensive numbers, especially the steal rate for a power forward. And his rating didn't change at all. Very clearly, I think he should be like among the like 79. Like he should definitely be like in the Kyle Anderson territory of like top-rated backups at the very least. I think playing a lot more for the Spurs with Jakob Poeltl sidelined. Chris Boucher has really been struggling with his shot this year, but 2K apparently didn't realize that that maybe they should have changed one of these two guys in either direction. Nick Batum went back up, but he started the year as a 77, and he's having a better season than he did last year, but he's still rated lower than he was coming into the year. Okay, that just shows that you guys don't know what the fuck you're doing. Grant Williams has been solid. Javonte Green was the starting power forward for the Bulls. Now that's Alex Caruso, so his rating might drop as a result of that role change. Other than that, like, Torrey Craig went down. I don't really get how. He's a good defensive player with a 60 true shooting. Like, what else is he supposed to do? I don't know. Gallinari drops. He's not really the same player offensively that he was 2 years ago with, like, OKC when I would have considered him, like, a borderline all-star. Cam Johnson drops for the Suns as he's been struggling with his shot. George Niang did not go up, even though opposite conversation. He's having a career season. 2K hasn't really recognized that. Kleba didn't play the cycle, but clearly he was effective when he played. Kenny Martin Jr. was effective when he played. Did not have a rating adjustment, though. Poku has a 75 overall rating, and he's fucking awful. I don't get. I don't get it. I just don't get some of the decisions that they make as a company. Who's the power forward on their? The starting power forward on their team is Darius Baisley, and he's a 72 overall. And if you compare his production to Poku, like one for one, Baisley is the better player in every single category, pretty much, and he rates 3 points lower. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? How many people do you have on your team, Mike? He's rated lower than Gabriel Deck, who's the third string power forward on the OKC Thunder. Come on, this is not too much to ask. This is disgraceful. Derrick Jones Jr. He's been really good in. Patrick Williams got hurt, and that opened up some rotation minutes for Jones. 70 true shooting, definitely responded well. 5 block percentage. He's been playing a lot of backup 5 with Vucevic sidelined as well, but his rating did not move at all. We can see with Eric Pascal and Chuma, very clearly better than those guys right now. Still rated lower than Jonathan Kuminga, who barely plays for the Warriors and isn't very good. Yeah. Sad. We see Najee Marshall go down. He's not shooting the ball well at all. I don't know what Mo Wagner did to deserve a decrease with his 56 true shooting. That's usually the reason why players go down in rating is their shooting. I'm not really seeing it. Like, when you look at the other players in this rating, they've all been struggling. And, the other players who all played, like, over 100 minutes by now, like, we dropped Mo Wagner. Did we drop Sterling Brown with his 31 true shooting? Did we drop Dean Wade? Who's not really doing much. Yeah, I just want them to be consistent, that's all. But it's apparently a lot to ask for. Let's go to the centers. Nikola Jokic is having a career season coming off of his MVP season. This would be the highest PER in league history if the season ended today. Obviously, it's not going to end today. This will trickle down. But, 67 true shooting, 38 assist percentage. Those numbers have never really been done before. This is Steph Curry tier. But Curry's never even had an assist rate this high either. So yeah, and he's a great rebounder. This is his career high rebound rate. Last year it was a 26. So he's his rebound numbers are up by 33%. Gets to the line. He's been blocking shots more than usual and gets a lot of steals. He's got great hands for a big man, which makes up for his lack of vertical. And he went up in rating. Very clearly, he's the best center in basketball. I would have him on the same tier as guys like Curry and Durant, etc. So they righted a wrong by boosting his rating, but I think they should just continue boosting it even further. Joel Embiid, he really didn't play much in this update, in this rating cycle over the last 2 weeks, but he's really struggled with his shot compared to Joker. We see there's a 10-point gap between their shooting percentage at the moment. I think it's very clear that Embiid should be dropping in rating. He deserved this when he was playing like an MVP caliber guy last season, but has not been at that level as of yet. Worth noting that he opted not to get knee surgery over the summer last season. So he's not really been, I don't think he's been 100% as of yet, and that should just reflect in his rating. Davis, he's been very close, as good or better than Embiid so far. He's a 93, should be at the very least on par with Embiid. I'd be okay with a +1 here and a -1 here. Rudy Gobert also, he went up in rating, and people might be questioning why, but we see here he's very clearly having a career year. 73 true shooting is ridiculous. This free throw rate is absolutely absurd. Just to give some context on how good this is, like Shaq's career high was like 60, 61% or whatever, and Gobert is dwarfing that. Obviously, he doesn't have the same usage rate as a guy like Shaq, but that in itself kind of just tells you like how good he is at drawing contact on in the pick and roll. And yeah, he's basically like Tyson Chandler on steroids. This would be the all-time highest defensive rebound percentage in NBA history. So there's that. And obviously a great shot blocker and defensive player as well. So I have no problem with this 90. If anything, he should probably rate even higher than that. The formula just factors in his lack of post-game a little too highly. Post-game doesn't matter as much for a big man in today's NBA relative to what it used to. But Karl Towns, he goes down in rating. I'm not really like crazy about it, but the Wolves did struggle in this rating cycle. But clearly Towns still scores the ball at a very high rate. Not great. You know what? I guess his rebound rating is this is not great rebounding for a center. We see he's slightly under 20%, and everybody within range is like well over 20% among the top rated guys, and obviously not the greatest shot blocker. Like, I'm not going to criticize him too heavily for this. This is basically on par with what Joker does. The Joker is a transcendent offensive player, whereas like Cat is just very good. Bam's probably a little underrated. Should be, I think, on par with Towns. Statistically, Towns has a slight edge, but Bam is a much better defensive player and rebounder, which doesn't really show up in the stat sheet, even though he's got a 1.6 block rate. That's blocks are not the biggest indicator really of defensive, or not the indicator that you would think in terms of defensive ability. If they were, like Miles Turner would be, a perennial defensive player of the year candidate. Jonas has been solid as like the best player on the Pelicans this year. DeAndre Ayton was hurt and missed most of the cycle, but he's likewise been solid. Jarrett Allen was super underrated coming into this, so they boosted him up a point. 69 true shooting is his career high. Similar to Gobert, he gets to the line at a pretty high rate as well, and he's been a big part of the Cavaliers' success this season. Clint Capella drops down a little bit as he's like he was what Jarrett Allen was last year, and he's not producing at the same level this season, so it makes sense for him to go down a little bit with the Hawks struggling. Vooch didn't play much because of COVID. Siakam came back, and he was solid, if not inefficient, offensively. But only 5 games. I'm not going to lose my mind over it. Turner's having a career year. He went up 2 points in rating. That means a lot more to me than his block rating. 66 true shooting is significantly higher than what he usually puts out. So I would personally have him in like the 84-ish tier. Similar with like Nurkic. But I would definitely boost his rating and drop Dame Lillard. I would be okay with Dame Lillard going down 4 points and Nurk going up 4 points. Comparatively, put Nurk in the same tier as guys like Valanciunas and DeAndre Ayton and Jarrett Allen. I think that is reasonable. Great rebound numbers for him, and his efficiency has been rock solid this year after struggling a bit with it over the last 2 years. He's returned to the form that he had prior to all the injuries. Montrezl Harrell, for him to only be an 81, very clearly the best backup player in the NBA, is going to run away with Sixth Man of the Year this season. Not really close. The only other players that are going to give him a run for his money are Tyler Hero and Derrick Rose. And I think it's pretty clear cut that 70 true shooting. He's just Harrell's just way too efficient. He's not reliant on his jump shots. His production's going to be consistent throughout the year. And with Thomas Bryant sidelined, then He plays more minutes than Dan Gafford, the starter by design. So, like, and the Wizards are like the top 2 team in the Eastern Conference as well at present. So, yeah, I think this is Harrell's award to lose. He's outproducing, like, this is his career year across the board. He's performing much better than he did with the Clippers when he won Sixth Man of the Year last. So, definitely expect him to repeat there. Rishon Holmes, probably been the best player on the Kings, and that hasn't really been accounted for, as, again, if we look at his production relative to some of the other guys on this list. 72 true shooting, he's a great finisher, great rebounder, and he's probably the best defensive player by a mile on the Sacramento Kings. Mo Bamba goes up. Pretty good shooter, good shot blocker, solid rebounder, better than expected this season. He was the third string center coming into the year, but it's really outperformed expectations, been in the surprise starter. Pushing Wendell Carter Jr. to the 4. And it remains to be seen what they do once Jonathan Isaac comes back. He might come off the bench with Carter playing the 5 and Isaac at the 4 once that happens, but I don't even know if Isaac has a timetable, so I'm not going to worry about that until it happens. Robert Williams has been solid in the starting role. 73 true shooting. Worth noting, does not get a ton of touches with a 12 usage rate. That should indicate, like, that's what makes guys like Montrezl Harrell so valuable, is that he's doing it on a 70 true shooting on, like, an actual usage rate. Like, 21 usage is not nothing. Similar to, like, Mitchell Robinson. We can look at Mitchell Robinson's shooting percentage and say, oh, wow, he's killing it with 78, but only a 9 usage rate. He's really only getting, like, you know, the putback dunks, all the gimme shots. He's not taking anything. He's not creating any offense or taking any difficult shots or anything. Robinson doesn't go up in rating. He's not the greatest rebound numbers of his career. We see Steven Adams goes up. 16 offensive rebound rate is very good for a center. This is basically back to his OKC production, much better than he was with the Pelicans last year, so it makes sense for his rating to go up. Andre Drummond, he has been kind of an interesting season, filling in for Joel Embiid this week, and he had a 49. He's not the same offensive player anymore, though. As Drummond's gotten older, he's lost a lot of his lift and therefore finishing ability. So he's a very talented player still, one of the best rebounders that the league has ever seen, and racks up a lot of defensive stats, but his usage rate is much lower than it's been previously. It was at 27% last season, as he was in a featured role with the Cavaliers. So he's got his lower usage rate has also not fixed his shooting percentage. 49 true shooting is very low for a center. We see Vucevic has really struggled this year. He's the only one that's in that same ballpark. So Drummond goes up in a point in rating, but that has a little more to do with that than this number right here. Lamarcus Aldridge, he didn't go up in rating somehow, but he's been great. He's very clearly the second best backup center in the NBA after Harrell, and has been very clearly better than the starter. Where is he? All the way down here, Blake Griffin, with 39 true shooting. Aldridge sits at 64, which is a career high. His usage rate isn't too much different than I think it's a 26 usage for his career, so it's not like this. I think he's 26 usage and like 56 true shooting for his career, so his shooting's way up and his usage is only slightly down. So clearly he's been very effective in his backup role. I think this is a career high block rate for him as well. But again, did not go up in ratings, so go figure. The Elites has been great for Golden State after having like kind of a lost season last year with the Kings and Heat. I wanted to, before we get to Dwight Howard, I guess, to Kelly Olynyk has been probably the best offensive player on the Pistons this year, but he's out for like a month or so with injury. I think it's like 4 to 6 weeks, so he'll be stuck at this rating. But Yeah, Dwight Howard. The fact that Dwight Howard went up in rating is like asinine to me. This is his worst rebound rate in a couple of years, and he plays like 12 minutes a game for the Lakers. Behind, like he's the fifth highest rated player on the Lakers. We've gone through so many players thus far that struggle to get ratings this high, and we're gonna see. We've got Ivica Zubac, Daniel Gafford, Jakob Pertl, in particular. These guys are all starters, and they have a lower rating than a guy who barely plays for his team, who's like the ninth or 10th man. Yeah, I thought for Howard to go up is just absolutely disgraceful, and it's like a very poor sign that like 2K is going to be able to right the ship in terms of what they're putting forth with their ratings and rosters. This is a byproduct of their system, not like something that slipped through the cracks or anything like that. Yeah, Zubats has been great so far. Stewart's been okay. Yeah, Gafford doesn't play a ton, 247 minutes in 12 games, but he has been solid. Rebound rate's a little low though, so that kind of keeps his rating down. Hassan Whiteside is having a resurgent season for the Jazz. The perfect backup for Rudy Gobert, fits their system completely. See his block rate, rebound rates. These are basically all on par with what he was doing in Miami, and his shooting efficiency is much higher than it was the last couple of years. So, I mean, even throw him in the same conversation versus like Dwight Howard, like it's just night and day. Plumlee's struggled a little bit with his scoring, so he drops. JaVale McGee started for DeAndre Ayton the past couple weeks, and we see he played very well. 66 true shooting on 23 usage. He was rated the same as Derek Favors, who not even in the same conversation. And they boosted Frank Kaminsky. Again, like 181 minutes on the year. Sure, if you want to hang your hat on this, go for it. But, I mean, we've gone through at least 100 players so far who, had similar, they did not go up or down in rating based on, like, this sample size. We know who Frank Kaminsky is as a player so far. He's been in the league for 8 years or so. This is just more a product of sample size than like, boost Michael Bridges' rating rather than fucking focusing on the third string center. Come on, guys. Moses Brown is the fourth string center on the Dallas Mavericks, but rates higher than all of them combined, and similar to Dwight Howard, he's the fifth highest rated player on the team, even though he doesn't play. This is likewise a disgraceful rating that, there's Dwight Powell, the actual starter on the team, with a lower rating. Drew Eubanks has been starting for the Spurs with Pirtle out. He's been effective. Hartenstein's been effective as Zubats' backup. He's basically Zubats at the minimum rather than like $8 million a year. Brandon Clark playing much better. And all these guys rated. Alperen Sengun basically been the second best guy on the Rockets this year. We'll probably overtake Daniel Tice for the starting job before too long. But yeah, here's Moses Brown, still trucking at, what is he, he's like a top 30 center in the, or I guess here he is, 44. This is unacceptable. Going down to over here, Serge Ibaka only played 2 games. They're dropping his rating, not really because of his play, or maybe because of his play. Who fucking knows what the mental state of the guys are in the 2K offices? But he's very clearly the third string, going to be the third string behind Hartenstein, and he was like a 79 overall. He was the second highest rated player on the Clippers, and I thought that was a little silly to say the least. Given the role that he's going to have with the team. He went down to the G League to get in shape. I think he came back up already, but very clearly, this is fine. Cantor, kind of a similar conversation. You don't need these guys to play a ton of minutes to drop them in rating because Cantor's been the fourth string on his team. the fact that these guys have had a significant role change is reason enough to drop their rating, because that's part of what the rating is about, is determining who plays off the bench in the AI's rotation schemes or whatever. So you want guys like Hernan Gomez. Like again, so like the fact that 2K has a real problem with we talked about small forwards being higher rated than the shooting guards. If we look at the center ratings, like guys like Dwight Howard being a 79, and then you have players like Garrett Temple being at a 73, Kevin Huerter's at a 74, Joe Harris and fucking Duncan Robinson are a 75. For Frank Kaminsky to go up to a 77, DeAndre Jordan, like all the players that went up in ratings, that just spell out for you like how garbage the center overall rating formula is as well. Again, guys that barely play, a guy that has been absolutely awful. Even Blake Griffin having a higher rating than Joe Harris is like absurd. Hernan Gomez, who doesn't play, these guys who barely play, like the whole center position is just completely out of whack with the ratings. We see Mike Muscala, 67 true shooting. If you want to boost Frank Kaminsky off with 22 PER and 181 minutes, then you also should be bringing up Mike Muscala, right? That would make sense, right? But only if very clear favoritism, or just be consistent. That's all I ask. That's really all I ask. Other than that, everybody else kind of struggled to hit the lineup. Nick Richards has more or less been the third string or backup center for the Hornets. PJ Washington missed the cycle with injury, so that gave him an opportunity, and he did reasonably well. But again, you would think that if you saw Frank Kaminsky go up in rating, you would see some of these other guys in similar roles likewise go up. I don't know what their thinking is. I think they're not thinking. That's the problem. But anyway, that was that's my five position breakdown for the second update of the year, the November 18th update. When is the next update going to be? Looks like it'll be December 2nd, which is about 9 days from now. I'm recording this video a little later than I would have liked. I've been a little busy. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to post it on Reddit and Operation Sports, all the Twitter, my Twitter obviously, all the usual places. You can follow me on Twitter and all that stuff, or download my roster by clicking the details over there. And yeah, if you have any thoughts on this, like how I structure these videos, etc., feel free to give me feedback in the comments. It is appreciated, as I want to work on making these a little bit more concise. I do think I'm presenting the data pretty effectively at this point, but I don't know. I just like to be as in-depth as possible. That's part of who I am as a person. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch y'all next week. Till then.